As part of our meditation this evening, these words of India's great poet, Rabindranath Tagore. It is the pang of separation that spreads throughout the world and gives birth to shapes innumerable in the infinite sky. It is this sorrow of separation that gazes in silence all night from star to star and becomes lyric among rustling leaves in the rainy darkness of July. It is this overspreading pain that deepens into love and desires, that deepens into suffering and joys in human homes. And this it is, that pang of separation that ever melts and flows in songs through my poet's heart, the great Tagore. When we listen to music, especially the music of India, we listen to the sitar and the sharod, the tambura. You can feel underneath those lovely notes the pang of separation, the longing to unite with the origin of our being, the longing to return home, to where not only the heart is, but where our peace is, where our freedom is, and our joy. It is not somewhere far away. It is not something to attain to. It is something to discover within ourselves that has the voice, the song of I am. Let's all just let go. You may want to take a deep breath, breathe in deeply, and as you exhale, feel as though you're releasing all the pressures of the day, of your life, and then allow the body to breathe naturally on its own while you, the witness, watches effortlessly. Through meditation, we discover that there is a separate entity that sits apart from all the trouble, all the pain, all the frustrations and loneliness that the body goes through. But how lovely to discover that the witnessing eye remains changeless and motionless throughout all the changes and motions of the body, the mind, and the senses. Feel this for yourself through watching effortlessly now. So I'm glad to see everybody, and because I know I'll be seeing you very little in the next year because some of you live far away, I always choose carefully what I'm going to read and present to you, hoping it will be memorable on Memorial Weekend. There's an old discussion that goes on in these teachings, and it is about the role we play in our lives and in the lives of other people if everything is predestined. That's part of our Vedantic teachings, that destiny rules, that what is supposed to happen happens, what is not doesn't happen, no matter what we try. But we do have responsibility. And I thought, I read this program in Westchester probably last month, and it had such an impact on the people listening that I said, I'll bring it to the Memorial Day weekend, because look, the house is full, and Sri Brahmananda would say, what better time than Memorial Weekend to undergo a major transformation? So let's see what can happen. I'm not promising anything, but I have the feeling that you will walk out those doors very different from the way you were feeling or the way you were reacting than you will be when you leave. So let's see what happens with this, I think, fascinating article. Before I read it, I will do what I usually do every time I offer a program. I take some brief but powerful quotations of Sri Brahmananda, because he was not too interested in our theoretical knowledge. He thought it was good to wipe away our wrong education, the knowledge that hadn't really helped us and that often was in the way. So to have theoretical knowledge or scientific knowledge, that was a step up for us. But really what he wanted us to have was practical knowledge that could be applied instantly in our daily lives. Otherwise, he always went, what's the use? You fill your head with a lot of nonsense that you don't use. You know, some of you have been to college. How much of what you learned in college are you using? I don't think very much, because I went to college and I remember my friends, but I don't remember the courses too well. Only what was practical, what I needed in order to do my work well. Well, listen to what Guruji would consider practical. He's reminding us in this quotation, there are 4, about what our primal duty is. What is our most important duty in life? He says, the prime duty of the seeker is to practice thinking in a right way. The choice that is given to us is not between some kind of thinking and no thinking. It's always between good thinking and bad thinking. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, not always easy to tell what is good thinking, what is bad thinking. Yes, it is. Actually, it is. If we had all the time in the world tonight, usually we have a little longer, but there's a wonderful concert coming up at 8:30, so I can't get into the dialogues with you that I like to. So I'll fill in the answers. Some of you like that much better. You'll know this as soon as I say it. If your mind and my mind, if our minds are full of good thoughts, how do you feel? How do you look when you look in the mirror? See, everybody knows. Good, some of the children. You knew that, right? If you're having good thoughts about your friend, don't you feel good? Yeah. But what happens when you're having really nasty, bad thoughts? You go look in the mirror, you'll scare yourself. I'm only joking. You never have bad thoughts about anybody, do you? No. The little one is very quiet, though. Her big sister immediately learned and said, no, not at all, and she doesn't either. But once in a while, I think once in a while, a bad thought slips in, doesn't realize it's you, tried to get into someone else, but found you. It's there, and when we're thinking in a bad way, it's surprising that the old aches and pains that hadn't been bothering you crop up again. The old tension in the temples crops up again. We get that signal right away that something is wrong with our thinking. So, our Guru is reminding us that if you've been trying to stop all thinking, you should give up on that. That will never happen. The mind's job is to think, and the only time it goes into remission in its thinking is when we're in deep sleep. Even in dream sleep, the mind is still active, producing the images. So Guruji is saying, simply be alert to the fact that we have to see as one of our primal duties, if we wish to be free, if we wish to be happy, if we wish to be able to live in a compassionate, loving way, we have that choice, whether we will allow bad thinking to go on, or whether we will move to, as long as the mind is thinking, move it to a realm where the thinking is good. And Guruji used to say, it's easy when you think of a way to help somebody. It doesn't have to be a big plan, but think of somebody you know who could use a phone call or a little gift or just good thoughts. And that keeps the mind very busy in good thinking. As long as dualism exists, the enjoyment of life is imperfect. Dualism meaning seeing others as separate from ourselves, or living in the world of multiplicity without being aware that you are one soul, one consciousness, enjoying this world of multiplicity. As long as dualism exists, the state of two, then the enjoyment of life is imperfect, because the journey of perfection and self-realization begins with love and ends with love. He's not talking about the love that most of us know on the relative plane, but he's saying, I'll ask, how is it that the journey of our perfection and self-realization begins with love? What makes him say that? And is it true that the first step of our journey begins, let's say, in the state of love? What is the journey? Is it an outer journey? No. If it's not outer, it has to be inner. It's an inner journey. But in order to go within, we're being told by this great teacher, we have to be in a state of love, or a state of non-dualism, because that's the only time our mind is quiet, clear and pure enough to make that journey. You try to go inward, carrying along with you all the memories of the past, all the worries about the future, that journey will stop short with a pain in the chest. Somebody was telling in the afternoon program today that sometimes when he's meditating, he's blocked by this pain in his chest. What is that pain? The pain is the past. And in order to be free of the past, we have to return to our pristine nature, which is the state of love. And that state of love is love for all, not love for my particular constellation of friends. You feel it in a different way when you just feel a compassion for everybody, knowing that everybody is doing the best they can do according to their conditioning. We have to keep that in mind, that we had the same conditioning and the same genes as everybody else, we would be behaving just as badly as those people. It's a combination of our genes, our environment, the circumstances of our life, all seemingly random. And that's where the compassion comes, from which place the compassion comes. Because you realize if not for some good luck and good genes and happy circumstances and grace, you'd be in the same sorry condition that the person you dislike is in. How many of you understand that point? Raise your hand. Good. That means the next time you see that person you dislike, you'll smile, as Gurji would say, with 52 teeth. It didn't help to tell Gurji we didn't have 52 teeth. He said, if you smile at the people you don't like, it will feel as though you have 52 teeth. The smile will be so broad. It shouldn't come from make-believe, but it should come from the understanding that I learned when I worked in a clinic that people are doing the best they can do under the circumstances. So forget. And Gurji is making this so simple. He was a great scholar, but I know he would always want me to pick out those statements that he made, which will quickly release you from the bonds that we create for ourselves. This is practical advice that we can apply instantly. He's telling you right from the beginning, we have to return to our natural state of love. We begin the journey with love and it ends with love, meaning a egoless, desireless mind, which is the mind of love or the state of love. And in this one he says, don't feel you need these disciplines the rest of your life in order to call yourself a yogini. There are people, or a yogi, there are people whom I know who have never heard of yoga, and yet they're pure yogis in the service they give, in their way of thinking, in their compassionate nature regarding those who are suffering throughout the world. They don't know what yoga is, but they are living yoga. They are real yogis. And once we are able to view whatever's going on in the world with a peaceful heart, a serene heart, feeling compassion, yes, but with the recognition that this whole universe is moving by means of that law of cause and effect and is perfect in its movement. Once you know that and have felt that, you never need to be afraid again. You never need to be contracted again. The real self is, I hope I say this right, is Achyuta, the undivided present, where categories of past, present, and future are transcended. That is our real self, the undivided present, where categories of past, present, and future are transcended. It is pure duration and eternity, which has no otherness and no divisions. The real self is the undivided present. That's where we find our real self. We don't have to go on long journeys. We don't have to even travel to India, although it's very inspiring to travel to India. I've done that and came back enriched by it. But you don't have to go to India. It can happen in the undivided present, where there's no India, no United States, no Europe, no change. I just spoke to Rup Vermaji, who's just back from Europe. And he's smiling that radiant smile. It's true, he's a little bit in jet lag. He told me that. Just came back. But even when he's not in jet lag, he smiles that radiant smile at me. And he said, I'm just back from Europe. And I said, oh, where were you in Europe? And I could see for a moment he wasn't sure, because he's here now. And he had to really work to find separate countries where he had played his music. Because when Rup Vermaji is playing his music, he's in the undivided present. It's not necessary for him to know what country he's in. Am I right, Rup? I think so. You know why he talks like that? Because he's in the present, in the undivided present. See, I'm waiting for him to say I'm always right. You're always right, he says. But I feel I'm right about this. Oh, this is why we love him and give him such a comfortable seat. Because he says the sweetest thing. But I happen to know, because we're the last ones to know what changes we've gone through. I know Rupji since he was very, very young. I'm here almost 50 years. So in these teachings and with Guruji and the ashram. So I remember you, very young man, Rupji. Some things happened to Rup because he's a cosmic man now. He's like our moving ashram that we're happy to send all over the world, because he brings peace and he brings that special radiance that Ananda is known for. So I'm not going to question you anymore, because in this matter, I am right. You should applaud, isn't it true? Those who know Rupji, is it true? This ashram was founded by Sri Brahmananda for the purpose of transformation of the individual. And Rupji's been here also a very long time. And I would say that Guruji would be very pleased, Rupji. Very pleased. With you, with your children, with Tracy. Family, that's a role model for us. The real self is the undivided present, where categories of past, present, and future are transcended. The real self is pure duration, pure eternity, which has no otherness and no divisions. And this is the reason I chose that to end with, of Guruji's statements. This is the highest statement that can be made. This is the one that once it's tasted, once that fragrance reaches us, that there are no others. They're just extensions of ourselves, everybody in this room. Once we make it our habit, our knack, to stay in this ever-present here now, that becomes abundantly clear to us. There's no difference between anyone in this room, just levels of preparation, that's all. Wherever somebody is a little behind us, we were there at one time. If we're a little ahead, we still have to move ahead where others have been established in the state of meditation longer than we have. But we're on the same journey. When we go inward and we reach that origin of beingness, the state of love, there's no difference between anybody here with anybody else who's in that same state. So that's the reason why Buddha's path was called the path of compassion. We need to have compassion for those who are suffering because they just don't know that they are already perfect, already enlightened. If we know that a little bit, then our compassion should come easily, because we remember how we were before we had a sense of that we're already enlightened, we're already perfect. We just have to have that revealed through the removal of the veils of conditioning. I don't think I could say that again, so please don't ask me to repeat that. The main lesson in Yoga Vedanta is that we have to be, as much as possible, in the state of oneness, the state of I amness, where we don't see any distinctions, any sense of right or wrong, good or bad, pure or impure. We just see it all as a tapestry of life that we have to learn to appreciate, in that tapestry has every color in it. We need a world of many different colors, many different contrasts, in order for it to be beautiful. So the good and the bad, and the pure and the impure, there's a place for all of that in each one's life. As long as in the beginning we start in love, and as long as we end in love, that's all that matters. I wish I could ask, maybe I shouldn't, let me see. Have no time to ask. But if you have any question, does anyone have a question that won't wait? That needs answering before next lifetime? Because I'll have time next lifetime. Anybody have a question that I can answer quickly? Maybe? In the back? Call out.
I have a question about money.
About money?
Money helps a lot.
Wait, you think money comes from us?
No, it helps a lot. It helps because then you have time. If you don't have time, you can't do anything.
Is that why I don't have time? I need money? Somebody bring money. Not exactly true. That may be true for some people, but there are other people who will tell you they were much happier, much quieter before they made a lot of money. Having that money causes more restlessness because the ego steps in and tells you what to do with the money, and it's always bad advice. How do we know this? It's a fact. They did a study of the lottery winners, and there's nobody happy among them. That's the truth. Their lives became quite miserable when they became extraordinarily wealthy. If you're like Warren Buffett, is that his name? The reason he's happy with a lot of money is that he's working daily to give it away. You keep money. This is Gurdjieff's advice. It's good to have money. It's one of the 4 legs of the table for the balance in one's life. It's good to have money. You need money to pay your rent, to do some traveling, to have food on the table, to help others. But he said very emphatically, never hoard. Never hoard a great deal of money, because it will affect your health, it will affect your mental well-being, and it will affect your relationships in the world. That begins greed. The result of hoarding, or hoarding the result of greed, begins to show on your face. If you travel to some of the villages in India, you see the contrast between the faces of the people in Delhi and Mumbai with the faces of the people who are so poor in the villages. They're poor, they're working hard, they're taking care of the land or whatever they need, but they're happy. It's a very great experience to see the contrast as you move around. And the happiest people are the people, the residents of the ashrams, who are usually, some of them, the ones who are most happy. the artists or the musicians, I shouldn't call them the artists, but the ones who are playing the temple music, I heard that joyous sound, and it had to be teenagers with that much energy and that much power and that much joy. And I walked in to find 5 men, not one of whom was under the age of 85. They had long white beards and no fat on them, and their eyes were glowing with joy and ecstasy, and they had rhythm. I tell you, they were extraordinary. They made you happy just listening to them, and when you saw their age and how they were really ageless, you knew that energy was coming from some divine place, a place of grace. Those are the sights in India that transform you. Not, viewing it in a cultural way, but a moment like that moved you instantly into your own ecstasy. You were thrilled to find time disappeared because of you've been there, these elderly yogis. You can't even call them elderly, they're ancient yogis. They really look about 2,000 years old. Honestly. I never forgot them. All right, let's get to this juicy reading. I hope that answered the question. For some people, if money is used wisely and you don't hoard it, it does allow you to have extra time. But understand, if money is being withheld from us, it's nature's planning. There's a reason for that also. It may be, if it's being withheld, that we're not ready yet for a great deal of money. Anybody agree with that? Raise your hand. See, the young ones are saying that. I don't know if the older ones were saying, yeah, but how long? How long? I'll ask you that next time. I'm going to read this, I hope, just as a reading and not comment too much unless I feel it's not clear. The title is Responsibility. It's an editorial that I found in the Ramana Ashram Mountain Path magazine. And their editors are usually extremely wise and very fine writers. This one says, our journey is principally an internal one of removing the sense of doership from all our activities. Our inner journey has the purpose of removing that feeling that I am doing something, I am accomplishing something. The chief obstacle to understanding is our mind with its habitual thoughts, its vasanas. No matter how sophisticated our mind is, and however well-intentioned we may be, invariably we become attached to our activities and their results. You can even have high activities, even this work in this ashram or in your yoga centers, high work, ennobling work, helping people. We're included in this statement. The temptation to attribute to ourselves the impersonal working of destiny is normally too great to resist. Even when we deny ourselves, there is a trace of doership, that I'm denying myself. I'm the doer who is doing that. How many times when someone says, how are you? You say, oh, I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. That's a trap. That's the ego talking. Our teacher would say, things seem to be going on nicely. Talk to me next week or tomorrow. Because he never had a sense that he was doing either well or badly. but that life was happening by itself. So where does responsibility on our part come in? It does. You listen. He asks right now, so where then is the responsibility for all we do and manifest in our existence? Are we accountable for each and every one of our thoughts and actions? Or are we just pretenders, powerless in the face of impersonal forces beyond our comprehension? Are we mere puppets on the wind? Children, I'm asking, do you understand the point of this? Is it up to destiny? Is everything in your lives just happening as an accident? Or have you had some choice I'm not asking you. I'm saying this is what is being asked here. No, you'll never come again if I keep asking you questions. I don't want to. I just want you to understand the main point here, because you're old enough to know that some things seem to be beyond our control. They just came as a lucky happening. And other things happen in a bad way, and we had nothing to do with that. So what's going on is the question here. Do we have anything to do with the good and the bad happening to us? Are we mere puppets on the wind? From an absolute point of view, we have no free will. And we are all subject to our prarabdha, karma. As Sri Bhagavan Maharshi said to his mother when she came looking for him, when he ran away from his home because he had experienced enlightenment, he wrote, because he was in silence, he wrote to his mother these famous words that changed my life. The ordainer controls the fate of souls in accordance with their prarabdha karma, which means the destiny to be worked out in this life. Prarabdha karma means past karma. Prarabdha karma is the balance sheet of actions in past lives. This is Ramana Maharshi continuing in his statement to his mother. Whatever is destined not to happen will not happen. Try as you may to make it happen. And whatever is destined to happen will happen. Do what you may to prevent it. This is certain. The best course, therefore, is to remain silent, meaning watchful, watching to see what is happening next. And that's his statement. He stayed with that statement from that earliest time with his mother to his final days of his life when he was 70 in 1950. He was still saying that, and it's still, for me, the most important statement that I've ever heard. It gave me a completely different outlook about relationships, about career, about attachment. Happy are those who have surrendered in complete faith to the higher power guiding our destiny. Those are just happy. Those who surrender, like Mahalia Jackson. Nothing ever bothered that great gospel singer. She refused to have a commercial career. She could have made a lot of money singing the blues or jazz or rock and roll. She absolutely refused. She said, I don't do the blues. I don't even know the meaning of the blues. I only sing gospel. Created the safest modern ship of the day. This was the era in Europe when people believed technology was the answer to every problem, and that man's supremacy, though not complete, was assured. It was just a question of time before they would be master of all they surveyed. The Titanic was symbolic of that age's zeitgeist, deluded by its own power and false dreams. So why then did the Titanic sink? And who ultimately was responsible for the disaster? The captain, Edward J. Smith, was an experienced man brought out of retirement for this one voyage, to break the speed record over the Atlantic on this prestigious new ship. The primary reasons for the disaster were attributed to a failure to take heed of radio warnings from other ships about icebergs, and to the fact that the ship was traveling too fast to take evasive action. I didn't know all these details until I read this article, and I found them fascinating. J. Bruce Ismay, a very famous name now, J. Bruce Ismay, the owner of the White Star Line, survived the tragedy and lived the rest of his life in denial that he had anything to do with it. Rescued by the ocean liner Carpathia, he looked a desolate man whose life and career were wrecked beyond repair. In the initial inquiry, he just kept repeating over and over again, "I am not in any way responsible. I am not in any way responsible." He was a bully. He was rich and arrogant, and he tried to wriggle out of the inquiries by evasion and barefaced lies, and spent the rest of his life avoiding all talk of the Titanic. One startling vignette of the actual sinking of the ship was that Ismay rowed to safety on one of the lifeboats full of women and children. He was the rower, and he claimed he never actually saw the ship sink. This is a lie, because for him to row away from the ship, he would be facing backwards and would have surely seen the calamity. If any of you know about rowing, you know he had to see the ship sinking. So the level of denial on his part is staggering. We see then in Ismay a failure of a small man to realize and accept responsibility. There was neither nobility nor heroism here. His misconduct was that of a petty man. He well illustrated Shakespeare's immortal lines, "Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once." Now, at the other end of the scale, there is the classic Indian spiritual illustration of responsibility, illustrated by the dilemma. Anybody know what classic example is going to come up right now from India? Who said Arjuna? Oh, you got it. Arjuna and Krishna. Arjuna. The dilemma Arjuna confronted on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. In his case, urged on and advised by his Lord, Lord Krishna, Arjuna accepts his responsibility. He's a kshatriya. He's a warrior. He's a hero. He accepts his responsibility once Krishna makes it clear to him, however horrid the consequences may be, and vigorously fought the forces of righteousness, adharma, fought the forces of unrighteousness, adharma, Righteousness, dharma. Unrighteousness, adharma. We see in the modern age still another hero, Mahatma Gandhi, who accepted responsibility for the riots which erupted during the freedom struggle. His response is instructive. If we identify with any object, whether any ideal object or purpose, as say Gandhiji did with the voice of the people in India, he identified with the voice of the people, then we can be affected by the actions incurred over the course of time. Any identification, good or bad. We are inevitably swept along by our decision to identify with the object of our desire, whether it's gross or subtle. In our own attitude and behavior, we generally fall between these two extreme examples of an Ismay or a Gandhiji. Though there are crucial life-defining moments in our life when we are called to rise to a challenge, sometimes we are called to rise to a challenge, our life in general rarely contains an obvious black or white choice. Think about your lives. We're seldom brought to a point where we're choosing between life or death, or what is clearly a sin, clearly a saintly action. Our life decisions are in an area that is mostly gray and made up of tiny moments that, when added up, are decisive in influencing how we think and act. From small seeds, huge trees grow for both good and bad. It's like Gurdjieff telling us we have always that choice between right thinking or good thinking and wrong thinking. We can catch that when it's going on and resist and control that. Because here we're being told that it's these small choices we're being asked to make that are very important, and they will add up to that point in our lives where we are more capable of resisting something that's going to hurt us. If we constantly are transforming our thinking by means of right choices. So, the question is now, how then do we remain silent in the wave of destiny which carries us along as either a willing, joyful participant or a frustrated recalcitrant? Someone who doesn't obey authority, won't go along. So we're drawn along whether we're willing and joyful or frustrated, rebel. We're still swept up in the tide of past karma, destiny. For the purpose of this editorial, let us focus on the dangers of the negative refusal to engage with that which is before us, as those who surrender and accept responsibility for what they are have learned this lesson already. I'll read it again, it's a difficult sentence. For the purpose of this editorial, meaning what he's after, let's focus on the dangers of the negative refusal to engage with that which is right before us, as those who surrender and accept responsibility for what they are have learned this lesson already. In other words, those people who accept responsibility, they've surrendered, they don't need to hear this discussion. But those who are not recognizing the dangers of their negativity to engage with what's right before them, they have to listen. Malcontent occurs when we refuse to accept the train of events and demand instead that they be different. He's saying we're going to move right into suffering if we refuse to accept that these events are occurring and we demand that they be different. We cannot accept what's right before our eyes. We demand that they be different. We want people, we want actions to fulfill our expectations. We do not want to own up to our shortcomings. It is invariably someone else's mistake when things go wrong according to us. The attitude of why me taints our behavior when life becomes unpleasant. We find reasons to be right, and just as many for another person to be mistaken. What I love best when I see it happening at this ashram, and it happens all the time, is when I see in the morning, let's say, Saturday morning, I see an argument is going on between our residents or two guests or something. And they're really going at each other, upset with something. I see it with the guests too, when they argue with one another. And what I love best is to see an hour or two later, they're together as if nothing happened. Or one comes over with a message with a completely different tone than the one that had been used earlier, because at this ashram we have been taught not to hold on to the past. And I must say, it's much easier for me to drop memory now that I'm in my 70s than it was when I was in my 30s. I'm forgiving everybody these days because I don't remember what happened. Or I don't remember clearly what happened. I don't remember what was said exactly because we know better than to go over and over that in our minds. That perpetuates it and strengthens it. So when I see these quick changes, the flexibility on the part of the ashram residents or the guests who've been coming regularly, or close friends of mine, that's what I love the best. It's not too impressive when you go to an ashram and everybody's polite and everybody loves one another and there are no arguments that you see and they are exactly the same in the beginning as they were in the end because they are in a state of denial. They don't want to see that all is not perfect within. They don't want to see that they have contempt for some and they honor others. You know, on the surface, it looks like a perfect ashram. But if you stay long enough, you can feel there's seething going on. An ashram where they let a lot of this come out with the understanding they can drop it anytime they want is a much healthier ashram. So take a deep breath. And now as you breathe out, release all the language, all the words. This will only be 60 seconds. So feel yourself letting go and opening up to this now. Feeling it, perceiving it, imbibing it. Sometimes it only takes 1 minute to reconnect with your real life, your real home. I am that I am. That is our home. Krishna Devi, would you lead us in our traditional prayer? Thank you, Krishna Devi. And if some of you are feeling very high, that you may need a designated driver, take 2 cookies. Chocolate chip is a great way to come back to earth.